SuperTalk Mississippi media production.
When your health matters most, trust South Central Regional Medical Center. From family care to life-saving treatment, our team is here for you. Find our services at scrmc.com. South Central Regional Medical Center. Excellent care and service, every patient, every interaction, every time.
MidDays with Gerard Gibert is on the air. MidDays with Gerard Gibert is powered by C-Spire. Power your home or business with C-Spire Fiber. To learn more, visit supertalk.fm/C-Spire. C-Spire Fiber powers SuperTalk Mississippi. Get ready to go beyond the headlines and join a meaningful conversation with people from around the state. You're listening to MidDays with Gerard Gibert here on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to MidDays, SuperTalk Mississippi. I'm your host, Gerard Gibert, along with Rhino in the Element Wealth Studio, guiding you through the middle of your day with facts, fodder, and fine music on this
Friday, y'all.
All right, looks like the old PBM reform bill has died on the calendar. That's what I thought would happen. No surprise. But the Speaker of the House, Jason White, is calling on the governor to start a special session, approve and launch and authorize a special session. We'll see where that goes. So it turns out the House, no surprise here, I don't think, Rhino, was unwilling to concur with the bill as amended in the Mississippi State Senate. Thus, the measure died on the calendar yesterday because it was the old deadline. The word dead, by the way, the key word in the word deadline in this case. So I guess you could say we're at the dead phase, right? We got one more dead. That's conference weekend. It is upon us, where measures that did advance into conference due to either side inviting the other to confer. That's the way the legislative process works, just as we were discussing earlier in the week. Really had multiple dispositions for measures at this point in the session that were still alive. They'd already been transferred back and forth via the appointed Rhino procession. You told us that the PBM reform bill was done in like 5 steps to correspond with the way medicine is kind of raked off the tray there as they take it out of the big inventory and put it in the little pill bottles, right?
Yeah, you get the big bottle, and you shake it out of the big bottle on the tray and count it out. Dump what's left over in the big bottle and dump what you counted in the little bottle and put the label on it. Yeah.
So you said
it could be a bit monotonous.
I get it. You said that the transfer of the legislation was done with like in 5 steps or something like that.
You're taught to count by fives, because if you didn't teach people how to count by five, or to count by fives, invariably you would have technicians show up and 1, 2, 3. I get paid hourly for 5.
Get paid hourly. Oh, gosh. So, what could have happened, of course, all measures until close of business yesterday, which I guess would be when the clock strikes midnight, right? You're still on the day. I don't think the rules prescribe like a time of day. I could be wrong about that. I don't remember seeing a time of day. It's just, boom, anytime today or of this final day, as long as we're still in accordance with the clock and the calendar within that day, you still can take action. If you don't take action, dies on the calendar. Or you say, okay, you folks on the other side of the Capitol, you marked it up, you amended it, we're okay with that, boom, we concur. off to the governor it goes. Or it could be, I don't know, guys, we got to talk about this a little bit more. We invite you to a conference, a fun conference over the weekend to discuss legislation. Those were the possibilities. So we probably ought to look up, though I don't expect to find a lot of what is advancing into conference. One thing we know, a key measure that is really feels like it's kind of sucked all the air out of the legislative room is this pharmacy benefit manager reform legislation. And it has died. So the Speaker of the House says, let's get together in a special session. He is imploring the governor to do so. Quote, the House will remain focused on doing the right thing for all Mississippians. We anticipate further negotiations among all parties to reach a solution that is agreeable within the next few days. It is the Mississippi House of Representatives' goal to consider and pass a bill that takes into account our state's patients and businesses in addition to independent pharmacists. Whether or not the governor will call a special session, it's anybody's guess at this point. I don't know that he's made any statements to that effect. He did say, however, that talking about the Speaker of the House, Jason White, he did, in fact, share that the governor indicated to him that he was unlikely to sign the measure, that would be HB 1665, in its form as amended by the Senate. That the governor has been working diligently with all interested parties to find an agreement. And I do believe this is something that the governor has invested significant cycles in, because this is sweeping legislation that affects many, many stakeholders. Virtually everybody in the state is affected by this, and certainly among the stakeholders, the independent pharmacists, businesses, patients, insurance companies, all the above are involved. Could have an impact on the state's budget. Many different dynamics are front and center in these negotiations and just in this issue altogether. But that's where we are in the state government. I think as far as other major measures that remain, the teacher pay raise, I think, Rhino, would come to mind as perhaps the other big pieces of legislation. I say pieces because there are companion bills. We got one in the Senate, one in the House, that would implement a significant teacher pay raise. And I need to look at the status of those, but I'm pretty sure that those are going to conference at this point, is what's going to happen. That would be interesting to see what the outcome of that is. Israel is warning that the attacks will escalate and expand, and that's rattled markets again. The Dow, the market's on track for yet another week in the red. Don't check your 401k plan there, folks, because you probably won't like what you see. All the indexes in the red today, pretty significant sell-off on the corner of Wall Street and Broad. Not really good news for your investment portfolio, and something, Rhino, I haven't talked about that you can't ignore is the effect this has on the public employees' retirement system, because it's got significant positions and holdings in many of these securities and stocks, and the return achieved on those investments is a major part of the revenue the program uses to pay benefits and future benefits. So when you've got a significant downturn in markets, I'll be anxious to see the latest report from the Public Employees Retirement System on exactly how their investment portfolio is performing. I would imagine that consistent with the rest of the market, that it has been beat up a little bit. But that's what's happening today. And the big driver, of course, Israel says they're prepared to keep fighting. Iran says they got a bunch more missiles they can hurl at us. The Strait still closed down. The price of oil trending upward again today, $96 and change. Certainly not going, 98 right now. So that's fueling even more concern on Wall Street. Also, the 10-year Treasury, this is the one that drives your mortgage rates, credit card rates, automobile loans, etc. It now, I think, above 4.5%. Wasn't too long ago, we were around, 4.431. So inching ever closer to that 4.5% mark. Wasn't too long ago, it was around 4%. And the Senate has voted to fund most of the Department of Homeland Security with the exception of ICE. That is so complicated because ICE, as you know, was funded in the One Big Beautiful Bill Act for 4 years. And so that continues, but maybe we'll get this measure down to the House. They will support and approve it, send it to the President, and the TSA, that's the most important thing, will be back to full strength to the extent they can, at least getting paid. Coming right back in the Element Wealth studio.
This segment of Middays with Gerard Gibert is brought to you by Covington County Hospital in Collins, where your health matters.
Bring it on! Middays with Gerard Gibert. It is on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Middays from the Element Wealth studio. So, the teacher pay raise legislation, just checked on status of that. Senate Bill 2103. That is the one you recall, Rhino. They did a strike-all amendment that, unfortunately, they struck, totally eliminated a bill that I really wanted them to pass, and that would be to delete the requirement that counselors in Mississippi's K through 12 schools abide by the guidelines as promulgated by the American School Counselor Association's Code of Ethics, which is just doing a walk down memory lane into Wokeville is what that is. And so that thing got stripped of that language. It didn't get passed, therefore, and it got replaced with this measure that would provide pay raises to teachers. That's the Senate bill. Conferees have been named as of the day before in the Senate and in the House yesterday, and they're going to talk about that over the weekend. The House bill, the original House bill, by the way, 1126, it died in the Senate committee earlier in the month. But the House bill that's still alive, HB 1395, a conference report was filed as of, I believe, today, if I'm not mistaken. So they already went to conference to hash this thing out and have, at this point, I think it was yesterday. It had to be done yesterday. So, 26, just looked at the measure. So that report has been filed, been presented and distributed to the respective chambers, and they'll go from there. So we got two competing measures that would increase teacher pay in Mississippi. And then with respect to the public employees retirement system, got a couple of different approaches there from the Senate and the House. Nothing definitive there. They're going to hash that out over the weekend as well. So that's pretty much what's going on in the state of Mississippi. Anything else you can think of, Rhino, that I'm leaving out here as far as legislative activity down there in the Capitol?
we could get granular and look at all 170 bills that are going to conference this weekend, but
it's 170. Okay,
there's a big chunk of them that are appropriations, and I fear that would get a little tedious.
Oh, okay, yeah, of course, and I apologize for not talking about that because it hasn't been a lot of fanfare around there at this point. But I would expect we'll get a fully approved budget. I feel pretty good about that. Now, what that looks like, I don't know, man, at this point, with all these asks for more money and money being approved and going out the door and the money coming in is trending downward, shall we say. And I got to tell you, when you look at the markets, which to some extent are a reflection of economic activity, the price of oil climbing because this war is dragging on. We're about to enter month 2 of the war. The president last night said, well, I'm going to give them 10 more days. We're not going to attack energy infrastructure, not military targets, energy infrastructure, because that was the threat the president made. You guys better have a deal on the table by today. And so he says they're negotiating in good faith. Don't really have any details other than that. He says I reported that yesterday. He said they're not very good at fighting wars, but they're good negotiators. And he also told
Didn't he call them strange and weird, though?
He did. And that's pretty obvious, isn't it? If your ambitions are to wipe everybody out on the planet or put a gun to their head and make them conform to your radical cult prehistoric values, yeah, you're weird to start with. I think those kind of work hand in hand. You got to screw loose. You got to short circuit in the old noggin. You're nuts is what you are. That's putting it nicely. We can't say what we really think. So, but my money's on the president of getting something done, but I'm also recognizing that this is placing a hardship on the American people, and the longer it drags on, the bigger a hardship. And we certainly can say, oh, yeah, just wait till this whole thing's over. And I get it, and that's the message. But I'm telling you, man, people, they live day to day. And they're not thinking about this is going to be better in 3 months. They're thinking about how to make ends meet today.
And there's zero appetite for the conversation about how, while America is feeling a pinch due to this, it's not really a whole heck of a lot compared to how some parts of the world are feeling a pinch due to this.
Totally true. Totally true. But, you know, people want to know, what does this mean to me? Yeah. It's just, that's human nature. It's not denigrating those people whatsoever.
No, I saw a couple different conversations last night of people trying to go, well, the Philippines are down to 30 days of oil. And it's like, okay, that sucks for them.
Nobody cares. They just don't. And they don't care about the past. They care about today and the future. They just do. And they don't want to hear you compare, well, what about this? And what about that? What about this? Nobody cares. Talking about comparison to prior days, prior periods, prior administrations. Nobody cares. Really don't. They want to know, what are you doing for me today? What are you going to do for me tomorrow? I understand, because the bills don't stop. And the needs don't stop. So that's where we are, and man, I certainly hope that something happens in a hurry for the sake of the country, the world, and, of course, the American people. You know, the left in this country, we've discussed this fair amount, they like to castigate chief executive officers. Hell, we had one that saw fit to execute one in cold blood in broad daylight because they didn't like something about their health insurance, right? So, to listen to the left in this country, however, you would think that corporate CEOs are the cause of every problem in America. And you always get these comparisons of, well, they make 14 times more than the average blah, blah, blah. Not thinking about the fact that, yeah, but the average blah, 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 no disrespect to them, is responsible for one person, themselves, and their work output. And the person that makes 14 times more than them, I'm just using that as an example. I don't know what it is. They
never do that math. They never actually stop and think, well, fine, if we took away all of the CEO's pay and divvied it up to everybody equally, it'd be a raise of $1.
You're right. We've done that. Remember, Reich was on the McDonald's CEO because everybody was complaining about Joe Biden's inflation driving up the price of Quarter Pounders with cheese. And he tried to say, no, it's because the CEO's making too much. You and I did the math one day. It's like, okay, that'd be like $8 a year if he made zero and we reallocated that to the entire staff. Or let's just say that we took his pay away and we cut the price of hamburgers. And we looked up how many hamburgers they sell. And it's like 50 cents per hamburger or something like that. Well, here's where I'm going with this. You and me, we got to get a new gig here because Joe Scarborough and Mika Brzezinski from the Morning Joe show, the president of MS Now said that show cannot be replicated. So they're pretty astute negotiators, as you know, and the two are married. And they didn't disclose the actual amount of the contract. However, they described it this way. It's larger than the contract that Rachel Maddow currently has with MS Now. You ready for this? $25 million a freaking year is how much money Maddow makes for 1 day a week. $25 million. But we're mad at corporate CEOs that make $10 million that have 500,000 people that they're responsible for. That's how stupid they are. Maddow, she just gets on there once a week and just spews garbage. And guess what? She's another one that condemns the corporate CEOs. And she makes more than them. You can't make it up, as the saying goes. So Joe and Mika have negotiated a deal worth more than that. At least they do work every day, I guess you could say. So her previous contract, where she worked multiple days a week, just so you know, was $30 million. So she took a pay cut to $25 million. She's 1 day a week. What do you and I got to do to get that gig, man? Oh, my gosh. Unbelievable. So Joe Scarborough was interviewed by the news outlet Axios. You know what he said? 4 more years, as they say at the convention, because he got this big contract. 4 more years, he exclaimed. I don't want to hear that hypocritical crap. We're coming right back with Rankin Sherling, Associate Director of the Declaration of Independence Center for the Study of American Freedom. Stay with us in the Element Well studio.
From the Seabrook Dot. You're listening to Middays with Gerard here on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. It is Middays. We are in the Element Well studio. It's our pleasure to welcome now Rankin Sherling, Associate Director of the Ole Miss Declaration of Independence Center for the Study of American Freedom. Hey, Rankin, thanks for coming on today.
Hey, thanks for having me. Glad to be here.
You bet. So give us an update. What's going on at the center?
Well, we have a few things to update. We're the fastest growing minor on campus. And so we've overtaken several other minors that are actually trying to turn themselves into majors. We're not to that point yet. We think that if you take our classes or you minor in our classes, that it's really just important for you to become an accountant and a dentist and a doctor and know all these principles of the founding of the country, so that you're educated and can stand up to the dominant leftist narrative about the country.
Yeah.
So that's one thing.
That's awesome. So the biggest.
Excuse me.
You said the biggest or the second biggest minor on campus?
It's the fastest growing.
Fastest growing. Okay,
so,
got you.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is totally awesome. So, what do you attribute that to? Is there just kind of a sparked interest in the subject matter, the content? The students just want to learn more about our history, our founding, and how we achieved and created and built this great nation, which is all rooted in the concept of freedom.
Yes, it really is. Our students, the Ole Miss students really have never changed, but the way they've been taught over time in schools, including like high school and middle school even, especially the way they were taught history, has tended to just focus on all the bad things that we've done as a country. Every country's done bad things, Yeah. And if you focus on that all the time, you just start to feel like the whole country's bad. And a lot of students just wrote what their teachers wanted. They didn't agree with what their teachers taught them, but they didn't really know how to express. They didn't have the data. They didn't have the facts. And they're hungry for those facts that point out, hey, that narrative is that leftist narrative is very incomplete and really doesn't stand up to much scrutiny at all. It's just low-hanging fruit. It's ready to be plucked. Those arguments won't stand for very long. They can only stand in kind of in an area where facts are not allowed to be said out loud.
So Rankin, how prevalent is this practice, if you will, if you could call it that, where professors are literally discriminating against students in their issuance of grades because perhaps their values don't agree with that of the professor? They express those maybe in their work content, or the professor just sees them on social media. They exposes them somehow, and those happen to conflict, and they literally punish them for that in issuing grades. I've talked to students at the university when I've been on campus for speeches and so forth who say this is actually reality going on, and it's obviously not just at Ole Miss, and I hope it's minimized there, but it's going on across the country.
It's certainly the feeling. That's the way students feel, and that has a huge effect. I mean, that limits what they say in class. It limits the questions that they ask. It limits their research. It certainly limits what they write on their tests. And that's not really true full education right there.
Right.
We have a speaker every week, and we had a guy who went to Harvard, and he spoke last night. He gave a story. He told a story that kind of illustrates your point well. He was in a teaching seminar. So graduate students teach. When you're in a PhD program, eventually you're going to have to start teaching undergraduate students. And they gave a little seminar on how to teach there at Harvard. And he was in that seminar, and somebody raised their hand and said, "What do I do if I have a conservative in my class?"
Big exception that you got to plan for, right?
Exactly. And she totally did not have any idea what to do if there was a conservative in her class. And this guy just couldn't believe that it had come to that point. But everybody else in the class agreed with this woman who raised her hand and asked that question. Like, this is outside the bounds, basically. So that the practice of silencing is very strong. And the feeling that conservatives or moderates or libertarians are not allowed to ask certain questions is rampant. And this is a strategy that parts of the left have been declaring that they wanted to implement since the 1960s. And we're just seeing the fruits of it right now. It's just gotten that's what cancel culture was. It was something that was already happening in academia that spilled out into the public. And then thankfully the American people have good sense and are not going to go along with that. There's a huge pushback against that. And that's really one of the reasons we're growing so quickly here at Ole Miss, that our students are tired of it.
Rankin, why academia? I mean, why is the leftist viewpoints, philosophy, values so prevalent? I mean, dominate overwhelmingly. We've seen study after study, surveys shown that 95% of the instructors, administration among America's college campuses are registered Democrats or lean heavily Democrat, support leftist policies. What is it about the academic community?
I think there's two things. It's funny that you asked this. I talked about this in one of my lectures this week. One of them is just on the psychological spectrum, thinkers tend to be either two ways. One is that they like to create a system that explains everything, and the other one is they don't like to be pinned down, and there's a lot of various facts, and they like to be able to jump between those facts. So that's a spectrum.
Okay.
And these big overarching plans like Marxism, for instance,
they
really do. If you stay within the boundaries that Marx would like you to stay in, it answers every question. No, there's not a single question it doesn't answer until you try to apply it in real life.
Right.
They just don't work in real life.
Right.
And most people live in a situation where they have to pay the bills. They have to keep things running. And a lot of academics don't have to do that. They do work. I'm not saying they don't work, but they get their paycheck every month, and it's different. They call it the ivory tower for a reason.
Well, and is tenure a problem there? I just personally believe it is, and I don't agree with the concept of tenure. Maybe folks in the academic community, even on the right side of the philosophical spectrum, think that is a good idea and a good way to run colleges and universities, but it just seems to me like if you've got guaranteed work, that doesn't exist in the private sector.
Yeah, so two things. One, anything can be abused. Any good thing can be abused, and the stories that we hear about tenure, that's what's happening there, in my opinion. There are situations conservatives are also protected by tenure.
Sure,
and they can write and investigate things in a way that makes the left, makes their heads explode. And they're not going to get fired for those investigations. And that's important. I think mostly the problem is that certain faculties have gotten captured ideologically on the left, and faculties select faculty members. And so this snowballs over time. So this is not a problem in the engineering department,
right?
And it probably in any in any university in the country, probably, but it is in English departments and anthropology departments and sociology departments. So the sort of soft sciences. It is a problem in history departments. Not all of them, but that's kind of. I think that's more the problem than tenure.
Yeah, okay.
But tenure can be abused.
Well, I would also say that you could apply that to typically to business schools and those departments. At Ole Miss, of course, the School of Accountancy as well. And this even in the heavily populated leftists in the Ivy League. I've worked with many people that were Harvard graduates that came out of the Harvard B School, MBA. They don't think like the other people on the Harvard campus.
No, because they're connected to real life. I mean, when you have this massive debate right now about what is real, what is true. Am I a man? Am I a woman? Is it because of I feel like I'm a man that I'm a man, or is it because I have an X and a Y chromosome? These are laughable, but this has been going on for years in academia. But in real life, whether you feel like that live wire is going to electrocute you or not, if you touch it, you know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
So there's a disconnect. There's this sort of the academic world is living in its head in some way. And certain departments are connected with the real world, like the business school, like the engineering school. The math has to, still has to work.
Have to produce. Can't just philosophize. You got to actually produce something. It's one way to put it.
Yeah.
Well, Rankin, really appreciate you joining us today. I enjoyed the conversation and grateful to you and Professor Scoltetti and all the folks there at the Declaration of Independence Center for the Study of American Freedom. I think it's a true bright spot on campus and in the state of Mississippi, and I'm glad the students are getting exposed to those concepts. Thank you.
Thank you. We're glad to be here.
You bet. We're coming right back in the Element Wealth studio.
on the John Deere.
Now back to Middays with Gerard here on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Pick me up, love. Pick me up, love. Every day. Pick me up from the bottom up to the top, love. Every day, ain't no mind to.
We're back with you in the Element Well studio. I'm telling you, we are blessed to have the Declaration of Independence Center for the Study of American Freedom up there in the heart of the university. And by the way, Rhino, you heard him say that it's the fastest growing minor. So it is a course of study. You can earn a minor in it. But the faculty has to approve minors and majors on a college campus. And I think the IHL does too, if I'm not mistaken, in the state of Mississippi. But it's also got to pass through the faculty senate. They would not approve a major. They felt like they were really capitulating and conceding to authorize it as a minor. And I'd bet you'd have some people majoring in it if they did. Promote it to being a major. But I'm grateful, I want to be clear, for what we have, because you can tell that Mr. Sherling there, and certainly Stephen Scoltetti, professor, that is the director of the Declaration Center, we've had him on many times, is awesome and is honestly a breath of fresh air, a bit of anomaly, would you say, Rhino, to be a professor of philosophy and religion in the department that you heard Rankin say is typically inundated and dominated by left-thinking people, not what you'd find in the School of Engineering. He put it so artfully. Yeah, they got to deal with math over there, not stupid concepts and philosophies. And I do think there's some truth. Do you not?
That connection to reality grounds them and prevents them from believing the stupidity that those in other faculties or areas of study allow themselves to fall down the rabbit hole on.
Get tied up in knots over it, and would certainly berate you if you didn't align with them. That's what I object to, honestly. And the same thing's true over in my alma mater, the School of Accountancy. It's pretty binary over there. It's not something you can philosophize about, right? Well, my philosophy of a balance sheet, no, that doesn't really work. So, man, a breath of fresh air. And I'm grateful to those individuals and honestly pleased to hear that there are students that are pursuing a minor and they're getting, shall we say, a diverse opinion, which is what college is supposed to be about. How did we get to the point where, oh, no, only this opinion is allowed in my classroom? You heard him say at the Harvard little workshop, what do I do, pray tell, if I have a conservative in my... Are you kidding me? Aren't you the people that preach diversity and shove it down our damn throats all the time? But when it faces you, like in your face, you don't know how to handle it.
It's because Jimmy Carter gave all the leftist domestic terrorists of the 70s a slap on the wrist and a pat on the butt to go into academia.
That is true to a great extent. And that kind of... It's not that it set it in motion. It was already set in motion, but it intensified it dramatically. I totally agree. Appreciate Rankin Sherling for coming on. We did do a quick look. Appreciate Rhino for leveraging the tool we have here at the network to track all the legislative activity. And Rhino prepared a queried report for us that shows 170 measures remain in this legislative session. I think about 3,000 filed. And just looking through many of those, a lot of those, as you know, are appropriations bills, right? I give you an example. HB 1893, just as a common sort of measure for the appropriations and budgeting process. Representative Scott Bounds, this is an act that would make an appropriation for the support and maintenance of the State Forestry Commission for fiscal year 2027. Very straightforward, and that's because that's, I believe, Scott Bounds' committee flowed through there. And there are numerous others associated with the other representatives and senators that are for appropriations to the agencies that are related to their respective committees. That's how the sausage is made and works, although there was, I think I told you the other day, is somebody out there that sent a friend a video that said Gerard doesn't understand the legislative process. Do I know everything there is to know about it? No, I freely admit that. Rhino, is there anybody under that dome that knows absolutely everything?
No.
Right. But guess what?
That's why they ask the lawyers to draft the bills.
Correct. And guess what? They rely on other lawyers and a library full of stuff. And I'm pointing as if they were on shelves. In those days, they were. They literally have to pull the code off the shelves and dig through the books. They're trained to do that. Now they do it electronically, but they still have to refer to that. But guess what? They can, and they can read it, and they can analyze it, and understand it, and comprehend it. That's what they get paid to do. So I don't pretend to know everything there is, but I know a little bit about it, enough to at least try to share with our audience, I think, what's relevant. That's, obviously, as you do, too, as Richard does, Lance does, is what we do here. But here's where we are. We got 170 bills remaining, and just looking through those, we may find a couple, but again, teacher pay raise, PERS, I would say, and PBM, those are kind of the big items. PBM's dead, but it looks like the governor may call a special session if the speaker has his way. Coming right back after Fox News, SuperTalk News.
Your of Middays with Gerard Gibert is brought to you by the Mississippi Business Journal. Visit msbusinessjournal.com. Scott Coopwood, publisher and president.
And now, the talk that keeps Mississippi talking.
That's what I like to listen to.
You're listening to Middays with Gerard Gibert. Here on Super Talk Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. It's hour 2 of Middays live from the Element Wealth studio on this
Friday, y'all.
Don't forget, we got some tickets to the Doobie Brothers to give away later on in the program. Also on today's episode of In a Mississippi Minute with Steve Azar, you'll hear from filmmaker Walter DeBob. You can listen to In a Mississippi Minute with Steve Azar today at 1 p.m. here on Super Talk Mississippi. The C Spire text line, of course, wide open at 601-879-4395. And don't forget to go to myelementwealth.com or call 601-957-6006 to let Element Wealth help you find your balance between income growth and guarantees. And, man, you need them more than ever because we got a big sell-off going on at the corner of Wall and Broad today. The president just said that we may be a little closer to negotiating a deal than previously thought, but the markets don't seem to be buying into that. The West Texas Intermediate oil approaching $100, Brent above $110, and then, of course, as we said earlier, the 10-year Treasury, it's trending upward. All of that factors in as negative for equities. And so they are selling off, and it has been a brutal month. Brutal month. The Dow now down around 45,000. We were celebrating it eclipsing 50,000 a short period of time ago. We were talking in the previous segment about the, 170 bills that have advanced to the conference weekend that legislators will be taking up. Many of those, as we said earlier, are appropriations bills, just your standard sort of stuff. Here's how much the agency's going to get. Let's talk about that, and boom, put our stamp on it, send it forward.
And there's another big chunk that's just extending repealers and ensuring laws don't go away.
Yeah. There are many examples of that. Totally agree. But there's one in particular that Rhino found for us that we're a little surprised is advancing to conference. Please share that with the folks.
Well, Senate Bill 2610 was authored by one Senator Albert Butler. And for some reason, the House and the Senate can't seem to agree on a one-page bill that would rename the biotech building at Alcorn State in honor of Willie Simmons.
I just couldn't stop laughing when you pointed that out. We got to have a conference on that? Unbelievable.
Yeah, the bill dropped in the Senate, got referred to the Senate Universities and Colleges Committee, brought up on the floor for discussion, was passed unanimously, 52-0 in the Senate, transmitted to the House. The House referred it to the House Universities and Colleges Committee and the House Public Utilities Committee. Went to the floor with an amendment. It was voted on unanimously, 120-0 in the House. But they can't seem to figure out which one-page version of the bill to agree on.
Just looking through it, as you did so artfully there, looking through all the actions, right, on the measure and the tool we have, going back to 1/22/26, fast forwarding to yesterday, and looking at the action on 3/24, Senate declined to concur, invites conference. Are you kidding me? But we have conferees named for this. We've got Senators Boyd, Butler, and McConn, and Representatives Scoggin, Holloway, and Calvert. They're going to get together and talk about this bill to name this biotech building there at Alcorn. I hope this works out. Willie Simmons, a good friend, been on the program many times, of course, served in the Senate for a long time and became the transportation commissioner for the Central District.
But it's a perfect example of the dysfunction under the dome when both sides can unanimously agree that you need to rename the biotech building at Alcorn after Willie Simmons, but they can't agree on how to format a single page of legislation.
It's incredible. Oh, man. Jeez. There are, though, as you indicate, there are many that are just extending repealers and reverse repealers. That's
I know there's one in there that made it to conference that would allow for the license plate or specialty license plates for the supporters of shower power.
Okay. Gotta have that, baby. It's a good program. I give them that. I know some folks involved in that. But
again, it made it to conference over a specialty license plate.
Oh, my gosh. And, of course, alcohol. I forgot to mention that. We can't forget about that. Seemed like it happened so long ago, but that's still active. Still have problems, right? The alcohol beverage control warehouse still at half strength, causing lots of problems across the state for packaged liquor stores, etc. So, man, there is legislation to address that. I'm looking at one right now, House Bill 671, to renounce prohibition as the policy of this state in favor of the legal manufacture, sale, distribution, and transportation of alcoholic beverages, except in counties devoted. It's related to matter. It's not related to the distribution problems, but to alcohol is what I meant to say. Except in counties that vote to institute prohibition after holding an election on the matter. I thought we already had that. I thought we passed something to that effect recently,
I think that was what it was filed as. That was one that got a strike all in the committee.
Thank you. You got to dig into that. Yeah. So, okay. Well,
that's the one that would allow retailers to buy alcohol.
Okay, they took that bill and struck it. Gotcha. But still, though, as originally filed, didn't we already do that? Like make every county wet and you'd have to opt out to be dry or something to that effect? Or was that just talked about and never made it across the finish line? Seemed like that was a thing a couple of years ago. Can't remember. Been a while. Man, we've had a lot of legislation since then. That is for sure. It is rather interesting that the Speaker of the House has requested of the governor to call a special session to address the PBM issue, since that is dead now. And it will be interesting to see whether or not the governor responds to the Speaker's request and calls a special session for that purpose. I'm just not sure. I have heard, third party, that the governor has invested a significant amount of his personal time with stakeholders to understand this issue, to guide his decision on this measure. And I'm grateful for that because it's complicated, as we've talked about many times. There are a million moving parts, and there's lots of conflicting information. I think is one way to put it, for sure. You know, the other thing that we talked about earlier was this loan program that the governor vetoed. Got a lot of attention because the governor's contention was that, hey, you guys are trying to change the bill after you sent it to me, and you can't do that. The lieutenant governor said, no, you got the bills confused. But it looks like, and so he vetoed the one that was on his desk due to his belief that that is what happened. And so they revived this program that was originally vetoed, and looks like that's going to be moving forward. And this is just really designed to assist local governments in their recovery efforts from Winter Storm Fern. Fern seems like such an odd name for a winter storm because I think like tropical climates, right? Ferns thrive in tropical climates.
The prehistoric plant that's still with us.
Exactly. Almost impossible to eradicate, I will say. You get rid of them and they pop up again. They've got deep roots. They're just way down in there and they start.
Bamboo.
As a good one too, yes. No doubt. So, looks like that they're trying to work out details on HB 1646. This is regarding the state's trust fund for such disasters, and they have decided to include a loan fund in that program for the purpose of assisting local governments in recovery efforts. So I don't understand why, but the House and Senate say they've come together to propose a 3% interest rate, which is less than the 12% interest rate the governor reportedly wanted, that according to State Senator Scott Delano. There was some contention over the wording in the bill over the interest rate. That's when the governor decided to veto it. So 3%, certainly below what you likely could obtain from a commercial bank. So I can see how the program would be certainly viable. Probably not so much at 12. Coming right back with Caleb Sailors.
Hey, this is Bob, and if you're like...
You're listening to Middays with Gerard Gibert, here on SuperTalk, Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Middays from the Element Well studio. We welcome now Caleb Sailors, Multimedia Journalist, to SuperTalk Mississippi News. All right, Caleb, we had, as you indicated in your notes, a little drama down at the Capitol between our governor, lieutenant governor, and a couple of other members of the chambers. The governor wasn't too happy about this disaster relief measure that made it to his desk for signature. His contention was that the Senate attempted to amend it after they sent it to him, and the lieutenant governor said, no, Governor, you've confused that with another measure, and actually invited him to review some video to go back and verify that the motion made on the floor for an amendment to a bill was not pertaining to the bill that the governor showed concerns that you guys are trying to amend this. You can't do that. I think I described that correctly, right?
Yes, I think there might have been some uncomfortable conversations with the governor and some of his staffers this week with some confusion that happened related to the disaster relief bill. So lawmakers in both chambers went to the drawing board to try to find a way to give low-interest loans to local communities, cities, counties that were affected by Winter Storm Fern in January. And they passed a bill and amended it to lower the interest rate so it wouldn't be 12% annually, which some would consider predatory lending, to a lower interest rate that the counties, cities would have to pay back on their loans. And, well, the governor came back and accused a Senate staffer, a House staffer, whoever. He didn't name any specifics, people, but he accused someone of altering the measure to make it materially different than what was passed, right? So what got to his desk was fundamentally different than the spirit of the bill that had been passed, kind of echoing your sentiments. And he said that was unconstitutional and possibly criminal, too. So alleging possible criminal conduct. And like you said, Lieutenant Governor Delbert Hosemann fired back and said, no, Governor, you've got it mistaken. One, you quoted a wrong lawmaker. You quoted Senator Hobb Bryan as making the amendment. He made an amendment on a bill unrelated to this one that you were referring to, because the governor mentioned a specific timestamp on a YouTube clip, because all of the Senate and House proceedings on the floor are live streamed. And so he's like, no, the senator who actually made this amendment is Senator Tyler McCall. And ironically, Senator McCall was on the floor. He's like, yeah, I'm not Hobb Bryan, guys. I'm not. That's pretty evident here. He's like, I have a lot of respect for him,
that's
though.
Awesome.
And, and he took it a step further and said, look, and I have a lot of respect for my colleagues here, too, and I would never make accusations of criminal conduct without first, conferring, talking to people. And so it seems like a bad game of telephone that took place in Mississippi. And, the old game of telephone where you'd whisper in someone's ear and you get across the room. And then when you get to the end, you have a completely different message than what was initially echoed. So I think it was a bad game of telephone. But lawmakers have since gone to the drawing board. Instead of just overriding the governor instead of overriding his veto, because he vetoed the legislation with the 2/3 vote, which they very easily could have done, they went back to the drawing board, gutted a bill. We've seen that happen a lot this year in the legislative session, where a bill gets gutted and they insert language from another proposal. And then this new one, though, allows cities, counties, et cetera, to be reimbursed before FEMA reimbursement comes in, before FEMA steps in with funding. And before FEMA comes in, the interest rate 0%. And so now once all FEMA reimbursements have been divvied out, the interest rate becomes 3% annually, not monthly, annually. And long story short, though, the House and Senate passed this measure unanimously. Now, it's up in the air whether or not the governor will sign it, but lawmakers, it's weird. In a very contentious legislative session where we've had our leaders fighting each other over various measures, they came together pretty quickly on this one. I mean, that after the governor vetoed it, they went to conference overnight on Wednesday, and then Thursday morning passed it unanimously. So we'll see. I'd be shocked if the governor didn't sign this, especially with the consensus agreement. And if he did veto it, I mean, they'd probably just overrule him.
But did you see,
point.
I just talked about it, that the Senator Delano said that the governor wanted to stipulate a 12% interest rate and that the House and Senate wanted 3%.
And the governor hasn't confirmed that. We've reached out to the governor's office to confirm whether or not he did want to impose a 12% interest rate on these loans. He hasn't confirmed that. I understand the senator alleges that, and that may be the case. We haven't gotten confirmation from the governor's camp. So I'll give Governor Tate Reeves the benefit of the doubt there.
Sure. Yeah, and it's not what he said. We've seen no statement from the governor to that effect. We want to be clear. This was the contention coming from Senator Delano.
Right. And it appeared that way, too, with the veto message, because, again, what made the bill, quote-unquote, materially different was the interest rate going from 12% to, I believe, 3%, because I think they meant 3% annually, not monthly, and that was what the edited version was Senator McCall said, no, hold on, let's add the word monthly here, so that way our local cities know that we're not about to just, mess them over.
Yeah, that's right. Okay, so what else you got from down there at the Capitol? We've been talking about that some this morning. Anything else?
The SHIELD Act passed in Mississippi this week, so it's another step to securing our elections. That's what this bill passed across party lines. Like the Republicans voted for it, Democrats heavily opposed it and still oppose it. Now it's on the desk of Governor Tate Reeves, and the governor is most likely. I mean, I give it a 99.9% chance that he's going to sign it.
Yeah,
but it just another verification method where if you go to your county registrar, you go to your county election official and register to vote, you got to prove that you're a U.S. citizen. So if you don't have a valid ID or a valid passport or a valid birth certificate, any of these gazillion things that you could show to prove that you're an American citizen, then they'll run your information through this SAVE system, not to be confused with the SAVE Act that's being proposed and touted by the president, but the system that usually law enforcement, ICE, DHS uses it to track who's not in the U.S. legally. They'll do that and corroborate it with the Department of Public Safety's database, too, to see if you're in the system, if you are an American citizen, if you have gotten a license at some point. And if you get flagged, then you have to go prove that you're an American citizen before you can vote. And if you can't prove that, then you can't vote. And so Republicans touting this say, yeah, of course, this is another way to just make sure that we're not allowing people who are not living in our country illegally or people who aren't American citizens to vote in our elections. That to them, it's a common sense measure. Democrats say, well, a lot of people, poor or marginalized communities have a harder time accessing some of these documents, and so you're adding an unnecessary step. And they also say that there's no evidence of widespread voter fraud in Mississippi.
Very, very similar, almost identical to the federal SAVE Act.
Right.
The provisions.
Right. Very similar. And it's because the SAVE Act on the congressional level would be pretty much to nationalize elections in the U.S. And I think Mississippi's saying, well, before you guys even have to come here and do this, we'll just go ahead and do it.
Yeah, we're essentially the state of Mississippi is implementing what the federal SAVE Act would implement.
It's just calling it a different name.
Yeah, but the difference is I think folks in the state of Mississippi support these measures and these requirements, and there are other states that don't.
Well, if you look at exit polls, too, I mean, the majority of Americans support voter IDs, support only allowing Americans to vote in American elections, too. So it's not like this is a crazy unpopular proposition.
Yeah, I think that's right. Okay, what else?
So this is a really cool story, and I really enjoyed working on this week. Derek Hall, who is a linebacker for the Seattle Seahawks, he's from Gulfport. Now, maybe not a household name to some Mississippians because he played at Auburn. He didn't go to Ole Miss or State. He got recognized by the legislature this week, one for his achievements in the Super Bowl. He had 2 sacks, sacked Patriots quarterback Drake May twice in the big game. The Seahawks obviously won. Derek Hall has a really cool story, Gerard. You're a dad, so you'll know when I point this out to you. This is odd. He was 2 pounds and 1 ounce at birth. He had a 1% chance of survival, 99% chance of not being able to walk or talk at any point in his life.
Wow.
Overcame all of those odds and is now a Super Bowl champion who very well represents Mississippi, is very involved in the Gulfport community where he's from. He has this Derek Hall 1% Foundation, 1% meaning that he had a 1% chance to live after birth. And now with a lot of his money that he makes in the NFL, NFL athletes are compensated very well. He gives a lot of his earnings to this foundation, which does work to help premature babies, mothers in Mississippi and abroad where people are either in poorer communities, underserved communities where they need help. And this campaign really does go toward doing really good work, offering health resources, any other types of resources that families need when dealing with a premature baby situation.
All right, real quick, tell the folks about hockey in the state of Mississippi.
Professional hockey is returning to South Haven after a near decade-long hiatus. You can go to SuperTalk.fm and be a part of helping name the team.
All right, great work. Caleb Sailors, multimedia journalist of SuperTalk Mississippi News, has been our guest. We're coming right back in the Element Well studio. Please stay with us.
From the Seabrook.com, Middays with Gerard Gibert.
Let's do this.
On Super Talk, Mississippi.
Let's go.
Welcome back. It's Middays from the Element Wealth Studio. So the Senate's kind of in a standstill after Republicans indicate they have presented their final offer on DHS, Department of Homeland Security funding. That, according to Senate Majority Leader John Thune, the Republican from the great state of South Dakota. So the Democrats were not ready to accept the deal during a test vote, but they acquiesced a bit. The new offer does not include major immigration policy change as the Democrats desired. And what happened here is, the president announced last night he was going to sign an executive order that would pay TSA and struck recently confirmed Secretary of Homeland Security Senator Mark Wayne Mullen, instructed him to pay the TSA folks, that he was authorizing the department to do so with the stroke of a pen. I'm honestly not sure how that works, Rhino. Why didn't we do that a month ago? Something is confusing about that. If the president could sign an executive order to pay these people, I don't get it. What's going on? So I've been trying to figure out. But the president said this is within my legal authority, and I've heard no objections from Democrats. No objections.
Well, it would be politically disadvantageous for them to try to sue to block the president from paying TSA.
Yeah, that would be terrible. Yeah, that would be a political liability, shall we say, a negative for them. It's just confusing to me that, wow, why didn't we do this a month ago? It's the first thing that hit me. I don't know all the details, all the nuances, everything that happened behind the scenes, but the president said, I'm within my authority to do this. So this is kind of quieted down the Democrats. He says, quote, because the Democrats, is the president speaking, have recklessly created a true national crisis, I am using my authorities under the law to protect our great country, as I always will do. That's what he put on his Truth Social account last night, announcing this action. Senators eager to cut a deal, of course. So I think the status is this heads on down to the House now, after the Senate has approved this funding for most of DHS, but not ICE, which, as we talked about, and some of our listeners pointed this out, was previously funded in the One Big Beautiful Bill Act for 4 years. Turns out that is mandatory spending. So I misspoke the other day when I said this still requires appropriation. It was enacted in law, and that's the difference. When it's in law, in other words, if funding is in code, in law, in statute, certain amount for certain targets for a definitive period of time, encased by dates, and it could be law that's permanent, such is the case with Medicaid, for example. That doesn't require annual funding, and it doesn't have an expiration date. This does, because it passed under reconciliation. Medicaid passed a whole long time ago, not under reconciliation, but through normal order, making it permanent law. Thus, it does not require appropriations, and it never expires. The funding passed in the One Big Beautiful Bill Act last year for immigration control, that what is it, ICE? What does it stand for? Immigration
and Custom Enforcement.
That's okay. Had it right.
Customs Enforcement.
Customs Enforcement, right. So that is, it's mandatory spending, meaning doesn't require congressional appropriations, but for 4 years. That because it passed with a simple majority under reconciliation to conform with the rules under reconciliation, that the old most powerful person in the country, the parliamentarian, has to, what's her name, Liz McDonough, I think we looked it up the other day, and hasn't she been replaced? Didn't we just see that? That it happens without much fanfare. the parliamentarian. I don't think a lot of people in the country even realize we have such a person, such a role, a job function in the United States Senate. But that's the one that makes the call. Yes or no, this measure is good to go for reconciliation, simple majority. You'd want to get to know them pretty good because they do have a lot of power. Didn't you find that out the other day? I think I do have her name right.
Yeah, her name's right. She's been in there since 2012.
Still there?
I haven't seen anything where she's been replaced.
I don't know why I thought that. Yeah, been there 2012. Wow. So she a very powerful...
It's been a while since they fired a parliamentarian.
That's true.
I want to say that was Trent Lott in 2001.
Okay. Yeah, prior to Miss McDonough, for sure. So the point here is that it looks like we're going to get a bill that does not include ICE funding, but ICE funding is handled through the mandatory spending included in the One Big Beautiful Bill Act, because it is a bill that got signed into law. That's different than an annual appropriation that gets signed into law for a year. Here's the amount we're authorizing for the year. Such is the case with our Department of War. There's no mandatory spending bill out there that says you're going to fund the Department of War permanently at this amount or in accordance with some formulas. Essentially, that's the way Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security work. So this thing, the holdup has been the Democrats say, well, if we can't get reforms to the ICE program, we're not going to sign off on TSA and the rest of Department of Homeland Security functions. That's been the holdup. It's not the funding for ICE, it's the reforms they want. And so but
if Trump pays TSA, they literally have zero leverage.
Then they have no leverage. That's the whole point. So TSA, it's fair to say, funding of TSA and restarting TSA to its normal status was being held hostage by reforms they wanted, not funding, reforms they wanted in ICE. Agree? That's really what was going on.
And a conversation I haven't seen nearly enough of surrounding ICE and TSA is just how onerous is the process to work for TSA when you have people complaining that, well, ICE showed up and we trained them on how to use it, and they're using it in a day, and it took me 20 tests and a whole course.
That's true. I think that's been revealed. Now, I'm a fan of privatizing TSA. This also kind of aligns with the question that I was talking about earlier with respect to school choice. Oh, my gosh, private money. You know, those dollars have got private written on them. Now they're public. Public money going to a private entity. We can't do that. I think we could, and I think it'd be much better. And guess what? You could conduct a comprehensive RFP, request for proposal, right? That would lay out the specifications and all the requirements. You could do it. There's no doubt. And I think it would be better. It possibly could cost more money, but I think most people would be willing to spend more money if we didn't have to mess with this crap and have it just be part of government. Not to mention that I just don't know that it needs to be part of government. This is something that the private sector could certainly do. I may even argue for that with respect to air traffic control. I remember during Ronald Reagan's period in the White House when he told them go to hell. Remember when the union walked off the job and he went and hired a bunch of people, said, the heck with you, kept it going. So, man, that's bold, honestly. Sort of what's happening here today when the president came out and said, well, I'm going to defang your leverage, Democrats. I'm going to pay the TSA folks if you're holding out because you want these stupid reforms, one of which is no masks. And the Republicans actually acquiesced a little bit in that they said, no, we think they ought to be able to wear masks and cover up their faces, but something, I don't remember reading specifically, that would identify them. Some sort of identification.
Yeah, it was patches or badges on their uniform.
Okay. I wasn't sure exactly how that would be accomplished, but I think that simply means, I don't think it has personal information on it, though, right? It just said...
No, it would be last name.
Okay.
And possibly rank.
Okay. So that's a little different, though, than using powerful technology to scan someone's face, right, on video and immediately figure out who they are. But the Republicans were willing to give in on that point. And they also authorized the body cams as well for the ICE agents. So, but
Which the left can't seem to decide on whether or not they like body cams anymore.
I didn't know that.
Oh, yeah.
Seems like a good thing to me, doesn't it?
That's the way it was sold.
Yeah. Can't lie. Hey, the video doesn't lie, right? That was the whole idea. And them knowing that every move they make...
the evidence from a lot of body cams are not fitting their
that's what it is.
adopted narrative.
So it meaning it actually vindicates what they attest to. Coming right back.
Polyumpa, Mississippi.
Are we going to do this?
Middays with Gerard Gibert.
Keep rolling. 3, 2, 1.
On SuperTalk Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. That's the great Lou Gramm on lead vocals. Foreigner, Head Games. I have a friend, I may have talked about this before. His name's Walter Herbison. Walter, I believe, is in his 80s now. And back in the 90s, I think it was the 90s, he wrote a book, Rhino, called Head Games. And it's instruction for athletes. The mental side of athletics, of course. And so he developed lots of procedures, if you could call it that, and actions to take to calm one's nerves when you're competing in sports. It's a big deal. And he actually recorded his book as well. It's one of those deals you could buy the recorded version and listen to it. It's fairly small, but it's jam-packed with great information. And he used to literally consult with sports teams. One of his biggest clients, Skip Bertman, when he was the skipper of the LSU baseball team during that 90s period when you remember they won several national championships. And Coach Bertman actually attributed it to a great extent to Walter, who, by the way, is from the Delta and played baseball at Delta State. So he understands. And I'd have him come in every year. I can't remember exactly how I met him and talk to my parents and 12 and 13-year-olds about just the mental side of sports and different techniques you could apply to try to soothe and calm your nerves. One of those, as you probably know, is to take a deep cleansing breath. It doesn't matter what you're doing. If you want to calm yourself down, that's what you're taught to do, right? Really ingest a lot of air and breathe it out slowly and get your lungs filled up with air to sort of calm your nerves. And so if you watch Major League Baseball to any degree, you'll see when the batter, just before they step in the box, they'll hold their bat up vertically and stare at the trademark, which they still have because they're hitting wooden bats. And you'll see them take that big, deep breath before they step in the box. And sometimes they'll step out after a pitch. Now, it's a little harder now because they got the clock going. But that's something that the deep breathing, he didn't invent it. He just really promoted it and I guess encouraged it. He would tell batters to get your eyes focused on the distance to the pitcher so you could really hone in on the ball, right? And say, focused at the logo, whatever the insignia was on the pitcher's hat. Get your eyes focused on that. That is the distance from where the ball's going. So lots of things like that he would teach, but that just made me think about the name of the book, Head Games. Walter also was a bit of a slapstick entertainer, and for many years would travel around to our veterans' homes and entertain our precious veterans, many of which, sadly, Rhino, didn't even have any family. They outlived their family. And what was remaining of their family was very little, so their life was in that home, with the other veterans, and weren't mobile enough to enjoy any sort of entertainment. You don't realize till you wouldn't have that, right? How big a deal that is to humans. And so Walter would travel around to those homes and entertain them with some music and levity and just singing himself and playing the music, and did that for years. And I'm happy to have supported him financially doing that. And I don't want to call attention to myself on this, but something I'm really proud of is that the Daughters of the American Revolution, many years ago actually invited me to be recognized at their statewide event just for giving a little bit of money to Walter to allow him to travel around the state. And he would always bring me a Christmas card every year that the veterans would sign. And I wanted to stay in the background. He would always talk to them, and I didn't. It was uncomfortable for me. But Gerard, they love you. They're so appreciative of you. And like, man, no, it's I who's appreciative of them, and this is nothing compared to what these guys did, honestly. And many of them, of course, during that period, Rhino, the aging World War II veterans that you knew weren't going to be with us very long and didn't have much time left in them. So it was great that Walter was traveling around and providing them a little bit of entertainment and a little bit of joy before they met their maker. But if you're listening, Walter, and I know he does often, appreciate you, man. Great job, great Mississippian. And his Head Games book, man, it's unbelievable. Coming right back after Fox News and Super Talk News, we got the afternoon portion. We got Doobie Brothers tickets to give away. And we got some texts we're going to get to after the break here. Stay with us.
Welcome to the show that challenges you to think deeply and look beyond political posturing. You're listening to Middays with Gerard Gibert here on Super Talk Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. Hour 3, the afternoon portion of Middays is now live from the Element Wealth studio on this
Friday, y'all.
I'm sorry. Oh, it's a little inside joke Rhino sent me. Can you describe what this is exactly?
Yeah, it's gotten a lot of attention on social media. I don't know that I would say it's fully gone viral, but it has gotten a lot of attention. It was in a courtroom somewhere in Oklahoma. It happened, I guess, in the last week or so because of the fallout of it. It's happened in the last couple of days. But it's a trans lawyer. The only reason we know that, other than our eyeballs, is because, of course, they had to tell that. They had to say that in the courtroom. But that's besides the point. So the lawyer, the trans lawyer, is at the bench with another attorney talking to the judge. And they're having an argument with the judge. And the judge goes, "If you interrupt me one more time, I will hold you in direct contempt of court." And then the trans lawyer proceeds to interrupt the judge again. And the bailiffs come. The trans lawyer's not having any of it, tries to play the victim, and then continues to try to play the victim the entire time the bailiffs are taking the lawyer to the ground and trying to get him in handcuffs. And by the end of it, after screaming, "I can't breathe," several times, and the officer telling her that if you can talk, you can breathe, and screaming, call 911, even though you're being detained in a courtroom by law enforcement officers that don't know what 911 is going to do for you there. By the very end of it, she is screaming, I want a female officer, I want a female officer, before being taken out of the courtroom and held in direct contempt of court.
Oh, my God.
The lawyer has now closed down their LGBT plus whatever law firm in Oklahoma and is trying to play the victim for showing their butt in public. And just as a PSA to anybody, doesn't matter if you're trans, you could be red, yellow, black, and white, you could be male, female, you could truly be intersexual, you could be a freaking gray alien. If you go into a courtroom and show your butt to a judge and the judge gives you a warning, your best bet is to not push your luck.
Amen to that. It totally invited it. Being arrogant, defiant.
Oh, yeah, I left out a lot. Like, there's a whole part in there where the trans lawyer throws her phone down and then tries to act like, no, I tried to sit it on it and it fell. And it's all because they're representing someone that didn't want to show up to court because they had a warrant, and the trans lawyer didn't go through the proper procedures to have their client show up telephonically.
Man, oh, man. Jeez. So, speaking of which, you know, I'm just thinking about the whole trans crazy stuff. I've said many times that the Democrats in this country genuflect at the altar of climate change, race, and radical gender ideology. Those are their gods. And it turns out that a couple of things I saw passing across my feed in New Hampshire, a trans activist who truly is a very ugly...
Duna dress.
It's unbelievable. I'm not kidding you. Trans activist, sad to say, a computer programmer, testified 2 days ago at a hearing in New Hampshire on a measure which would define, as we have done here in the state of Mississippi, biological sex in law. This individual's name is Hazel Kane, H-A-Z. Folks, you got to see Rhino's facial expression on that one. Said that women who are uncomfortable seeing a woman with a penis need to get over it. I'm not kidding. Oh, my gosh. We live in a free society, and if that produces discomfort, get over it. See, here's the problem. That doesn't mean that we can't define what a man and a woman are. If that's uncomfortable, get over it. Take a dose of your own damn medicine, you weirdo. Oh, my gosh. And just to illustrate further and validate my point about the genuflection, the revering those three gods, climate, race, and gender ideology, in Ohio, they just passed a measure known as the Indecent Exposure Modernization Act. They had to modernize what's indecent exposure defined as such. That would simply criminalize sexually explicit performances in front of children, which the left's been thrusting on our kids now for several years. I don't get that crazy crap. I really don't. Why they feel the need to thrust it on children. What's up? What's that all about?
The rather uncomfortable truth that seemingly no one wants to talk about is because there's a vast majority of those in the LGBTQ plus whatever community that have trauma from their childhood stemming from molestation, and that is likely why they act the way they act.
That's true. That's absolutely true. And that's abhorrent. So,
but instead of getting the help they need and deserve, they continue the cycle and force it on children.
That's exactly right.
The same way they had sexuality forced on them.
That's right. It's almost their way of managing it in their heads, right? In dealing with it. Yeah.
But the compassionate left would say we are being hateful.
I I see. We're being
by
hateful.
not engendering them.
Well, in Ohio, this measure gets passed. You won't be surprised when I tell you every Democrat voted against it. So does that mean they condone, they support, they encourage, promote sexual deviancy in front of children? Is that what they're saying here with their no vote? Am I jumping to a radical conclusion on the extreme? I don't think so.
That's what I was talking about. You're hateful if you don't condone their behavior.
You people are sick. You don't deserve to serve the public in elected office. You're not fit. I just
You're
can't. I can't get
describing
over
the vast
it.
majority of the Democrat Party.
I can't get over it. I really can't. How could you vote against that? Man.
Because the act of virtue signaling for the LGBTQ plus whatever community garners more positive feelings and emotions than doing what is actually logical and right.
And that's the unfortunate reality. It's to a great extent, could you not apply that concept, that analysis, to our conversation with Rankin Sherling earlier with respect to the occurrence of leftist ideologues that have just crazy views and values that permeate various disciplines on a college campus, but not as prevalent, if to some extent almost not existent, in like engineering. He said it. We're not surprised by that. We know that, or even business. I pointed that out because that's been my experience. But you don't find that as much when you go into the history world, the English world.
Because whether or not a steel beam can carry the load of all these cars on the bridge really doesn't matter. The gender, the sexuality, the race, the nationality,
right?
Any of that of the individual designing the bridge. What matters is they got the math right. Whereas telling stories about history, well, if you want to feel more confident and comfortable in your skin and you're one of these weirdos, then you can shape history to be whatever you want it is. You can call middle-aged knights in armor, oh, well, they were obviously trans because my brain only sees things in trans.
You seem to be indicating that there's no place for feelings in engineering and in math and accounting and business. No place for it.
Because at a certain level in those fields, if you worry more about feelings than facts, people can die.
That's exactly right. Those are the consequences. Death. And that's not an exaggeration, by the way, whatsoever.
I don't feel like this girder should be at this angle. Sorry, the math says it should.
On the C Spire text line, and how can you be a Christian and support the Democrat Party? Heck, they denounce Christians in many situations. They condemn, criticize, castigate.
Or if you're like Tallarico, you just twist it into knots until it finally says what you want it to say.
That nutcase. That's the guy, of course, that won the Democrat primary in Texas and is headed to the general election. He's a weirdo. There's no doubt. But he's like put a spell on all those people over there in Texas. We're coming right back. In a minute, we're going to give away some Doobie Brothers tickets. Stay with us.
I'm Sandy, and
attention, adoring fans! It's time for
Middays with Gerard Gibert on SuperTalk Mississippi.
You gotta feed it! Oh, please believe me, I hate to miss the train. Yes, I do. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
You've probably seen the landmark case that found Meta guilty of luring kids and addicting kids and publishing addictive content. what do they call it? Scrolling. Death scrolling, something like that.
Scrolling.
Doom scrolling. Yeah, it was something like that.
Doom scrolling and brain rot.
There you go. I have mixed feelings about this. On the one hand, yeah, I mean, if they were intentionally trying to hook the kids, I have some issues with that. If that was certainly the goal, but it's a tough one because that's how they make money as well, right? They literally can track the time spent on the platform and every time an ad passes by your feed, every time you click into it, all the above, all that stuff are metrics that they record and accumulate and used in selling advertising. And it's the selling of the advertising and the inconvenience of having to see that in your feeds is what makes those platforms free. And the little bit of information that they're collecting about your profile, your preferences, your sort of your personality, that's all valuable information that's monetized. So I certainly understand concerns, but on the other hand, at what point, Rhino, do we say, you know what? Why did you let your kids do that? Isn't there some degree of responsibility that parents have to bear for this? You can't just go, hey, go over there in the corner and here's a device for you, and then get mad when they get addicted to it. Especially when the terms of service usually have an age cutoff around 12 or 13. Exactly. And you know that there certainly are very powerful technologies that could be used to attempt to validate age. But they ain't perfect. And my concern is that if the government steps in with all sorts of requirements along those lines and all sorts of laws and regulations that could impose stiff fines and other consequences on these companies, that's going to have an effect on our legitimate use of those platforms and potentially the cost. And then you've got to think about the fact that you may not like all those ads and stuff, and I get it. There are a lot of people that make a lot of money because they have access to millions of people, actually billions, that use these tools. And they respond. If it didn't work, they wouldn't do it. That's just simple as that. If those platforms didn't work in producing revenue through advertising and promotion, then they wouldn't spend the money on it. So it's a tough one, man. But they essentially, YouTube and Meta lost the social media addiction case. I'm feeling like this is starting to look a little bit like the tobacco case. It seems like there's some similarities to that. Now, I guess you could say, yeah, because remember the whole premise of the case was these tobacco companies knew this was bad for you and they didn't disclose that, and and therefore you got to pay up. Well, it's not just that they didn't disclose it; it's that they actively worked to hide it. Yeah, that's right, and that's including using doctors and advertising. That's absolutely true, and so I get that, and maybe it's unfair to equate this scenario to that. But I don't know. I'm just always getting nervous when government sticks their nose in stuff like this and issues all these requirements and regulations and rules, and it gets to the point where it imposes costs. Well, I mean, a perfect example is how the FTC has regulated television geared towards children. Yeah. My generation and the generation before me, we have fond memories of Saturday morning cartoons from the 80s and 90s. And while it could be argued there was some psychological effect on the youth of the era to want more and more of the toys, but that's really all the cartoons were in that day and age, were 15 to 30-minute advertisements for toys. Yeah, that's right. And the government was not okay with that.
and changed rules and basically made it to where children's television now has to be educational in some way. You don't have just the little moral at the end of the story, and that's all you got to do.
Yeah. So we lost the entertainment back,
right,
essentially.
Through government trying to do what's best for the kids.
Oh, my gosh. On the C Spire text line, Jeff says, I'm not sure if you're aware of this or not, but on Court TV, they're broadcasting a trial from Calhoun County, Mississippi, or I'm not sure. It was a Virginia man killed his daughter's boyfriend, but the whole family seems like they're a bunch of nuts. I wasn't aware of that. Thanks for letting us know that.
Yeah, I tried to find it on the website for Court TV. I couldn't find any info on it. But
yeah. Mike in Gulfport, of course, he mirrors what we said. I'm just feeling there are very few conservatives in much of our higher education. So exactly right, Mike. And look, that's not even opinion or speculation, right? I mean, there have been numerous polls done, surveys by a cross-section of organizations, left and right, that reveal that same reality, especially when in the states where you register by party or you poll contributions to political candidates. That's another big one. Like some gigantic, overwhelming percent of political contributions by academia go to Democrats. So no secret there. And I'm okay with that, right? That's their right. I just think we need more balance. And what I'm not okay with, and somebody said this on our text line, that this was absolutely happening to their daughter, if I can find it, that at Ole Miss, that they were being discriminated against in the, absolutely happening. My daughter experienced it at Ole Miss 8, 9, 10 years ago. Had to create work that matched a narrative to please the teachers. That's just wrong, and I appreciate you letting us know. And when I go up there to speak to the various student organizations, I will ask that question, and almost every student in the class will shake their head. Yeah, I at least have one class where it is a problem, and I am fearful. Like, even to the point where the fact that if the professor knows they're Christian, which that's despicable, that a person's faith. Now, remember, Rhino, these are the same people that say that in other scenarios, such as business or a number of other situations where decisions are made. Let's say college admissions. That would be one. Credit would be one. Banking, right? Oh, my gosh, you can't discriminate. Oh, but here in my classroom, yeah, we discriminate. It's another example of just a blatant hypocrisy. It's exactly what it is. So
it's because the most vocal proponents of leftism, liberalism, and wokeism are truly terrible people looking for excuses to be terrible people.
Oh, there's no doubt about it. So, yeah, Casey on the C Spire text line, I agree with you, Casey, sent the upside-down emoji. The American School Counselor Association language that got stripped from the measure that ultimately got replaced with the teacher pay raise. That measure originally introduced in the Senate by Senator Hill and passed the Senate. Got transmitted to the House. They stripped it, amended it, stuck the teacher pay raise. I know, Casey, you have told us about that now for 2 or 3 years, and I'm with you. Once you informed us of that, I certainly did a little research looking into the ASCA and found what you had shared with us, which is they're just engaged in social activism. They're not really providing meaningful guidance. If they are, they don't make that evident, certainly, in their published information and documents and website and so forth, their content. But yes, I agree. The state of Mississippi should terminate its relationship with that organization. Certainly not mandate it that their standards and guidance be used in counseling in the K-12 schools in Mississippi. Appreciate you alerting us to that. Yeah, on the C Spire text line, talking about Rachel Maddow signing a $25 million a year contract for 1 day a week. $500,000 a show, exactly. $500,000 a show. It's insane. Man, oh man. Let's see, on the C Spire text line, I imagine, talking about the president signing an executive order to pay TSA, I imagine he doesn't have the authority to do that, but he's counting on nobody having the guts to sue him. I'm just not sure. I feel like the Democrats would have already been squawking about that and announcing that and proclaiming, yeah, that's unconstitutional. I haven't heard that yet. I'm still a little dumbfounded as to why we waited a month to get that done. I don't know. Coming right back. Got tickets to give away.
From the Seabrook. And now, the talk that keeps Mississippi talking.
Now, on to the real part.
Dynamite! On SuperTalk Mississippi.
Ace bumping us into this segment here on Middays. Fannie Mae Freddie Mac says they'll now accept crypto-backed mortgages, thrusting the funny money even further into the mainstream. But right now, Rhino's going to give away some tickets.
Oh, yeah, one of the best-selling bands of all time, the Doobie Brothers, are coming to Brandon later this year. They're going to be at the Brandon Amphitheater on October the 14th, and you don't want to miss it. Tickets for the show are on sale now at the Brandon Amphitheater box office and Ticketmaster.com, but we're giving you a chance to win a free pair of tickets, and who doesn't like free? So to get a free pair of tickets to see the Doobie Brothers, you got to be the 12th person to text us the words "Long Train Running." Text the words "Long Train Running" and be the 12th person to do so to the C Spire text line, which is 601-879-4395. And you'll get a free pair of tickets to see the Doobie Brothers at the Brandon Amphitheater on October 14th.
There you go. Looks like the United States military is going to allow admission, up to age 42. 42. Wow.
And there's a little bit of spin in both directions on why people think that's happening.
Okay.
One spin on it is they think that the war in Iran is going so badly that we have to replenish our ranks and extend the age up. The other spin on it, the one that I'm more inclined to believe, is that there are a lot of global war on terror veterans that fought in Iraq and Afghanistan and had to deal with the consequences of Iran sponsoring terror.
Yeah.
That would like to get back in and give them what for.
Used to be 35. Was
Correct.
the top age. So now it's 42. You can enter as a recruit. And by the way, the president did announce more troops being deployed. I think he announced that late yesterday into the region. Some 10,000. That's a bunch. But says no attacks on energy infrastructure. I am concerned that Iran seems to still possess ballistic missile capability. They and Israel still trading missile attacks, and that's causing problems and certainly still making the markets nervous, that's for sure. They just don't feel like that this thing, the end is in sight to this thing at this point. I certainly hope that that is the case, and just kind of waiting for more information from the president. By the way, the president did announce, to the extent that this is truly helpful, I don't know, but a loan program for our farmers, understanding that they really are being negatively impacted by tariffs, by supply chain disruptions, by the price of fertilizer and the price of fuel, all the above. Those are critical inputs, of course, for growing crops. Those prices skyrocketing. You know that's a huge issue. I'm really concerned about the farmers here in the state of Mississippi to that extent. So he announced a loan program. Loan guarantees is really what it is for those qualifying farmers. I think this is going to be administered through the Small Business Administration. Covers vegetable, grain, and seed farmers, cattle, pig, poultry, and egg producers, as well as grocery wholesalers. That's according to the White House. Details coming on that. Yes, the SBA will administer the guarantees. So, sounds like because the SBA is essentially backing through a guarantee these loans, the loans will be made through the traditional process and outlet of commercial banks who are in the business of loaning money, of course, to farmers. The SBA is just going to serve as a cushion and guarantee those loans. Hopefully there won't be a need to invoke those guarantees, because that will mean that the farmer who received the loan is defaulting on the loan. That would be generally because of their business failing, and that's not a good thing. So this brand new program that's announced. Meanwhile, over there in La La Land in the Senate, the U.S. Senate, it's Liz Warren. She's introducing a wealth tax just yesterday, and she says there are more than 50 members of Congress that support her confiscatory desires there. Says it's time for government to start working for American families, not just the ultra-rich. So in her view, allowing you to keep the money that you lawfully, rightfully earned because you served society, that little issue seems to be lost. That little feature of free enterprise. These people that got wealthy just because they really helped a lot of people. A lot of people liked what they did, and they said, have some money, and I'll take whatever it is you're buying, or selling, excuse me. So she's got a wealth tax on the table. That, of course, unconstitutional. Not that that's stopping Hiawatha from pursuing it.
Hiawatha.
Hiawatha, that's what the president...
Don't run down the good name of Hiawatha.
That's true. What did the president call her? Pocahontas?
Oh, yeah.
Awesome. What a dang liar she is. All for attention, right? It was one. You say it all the time. You're so right. You're so spot on. It was all for attention. To attention. Look at me.
And to get ahead early in her life.
That is true. She did benefit from that. Because the institution that hired her and paid her engaged in discrimination is really what happened.
And it was the trendy thing for hippie chicks to want to be more Native American.
That is true. So she's got this clever little meme that is a blue background, rectangular, split down the middle with a dotted line. And on the left side, as I look at it here, in all bold capital letters, if we tax rich people like this, and below that, 2 shiny pennies with Abraham Lincoln's head showing there, his bust showing there on the penny. If 2 of them, for every dollar owned, not earned, made, owned, above $50 million, they pay 2 cents plus 1 penny for every dollar owned above $1 billion. They pay 1 more cent. And we could have universal child care. Lower housing costs by building millions of new homes, slash child poverty, expand Medicare, provide free community college, and still have money left over, Hiawatha proclaims.
You can tell she doesn't really fully grasp math.
That is so true. Not that we're shocked at that, but this is how they think. We're just going to take it out of this pocket, skim a bit off the top when it flows through this place that I work called the Congress, and then we're going to send it out the door to these people, and we're going to celebrate, and we're going to take all the praise for it and take the victory laps. That's literally how she thinks. Again, like I've said so many times before, not about expanding the pie, simply recutting it. Confiscating wealth. Now, we're not talking about income. That's bad enough. This is how they think. And this idea of it's time for government to start working for American families. Tell me how government works when it takes out of one pocket and just hands it to you. Here, take some of their money. I'm here to help you, government. I'm taking from them. I'm giving it to you. Please sure and pat me on the back. By the way, be the second to congratulate me because I was the first to self-congratulate.
Pay no attention to the missing percentages of the money that came in. That's going to my friends and family.
100%. Totally true. That's part of the skimming off the top operation, of course. This just disgusts me. This is true Marxism, is what this is. It's stoking the class warfare, and sadly, it resonates. That's what bothers me more than anything is that people can't apply the old second-order thinking and don't understand the deleterious consequences that would no doubt stem from
the average
this.
Democrat voter has a shorter memory than a goldfish.
Jesus.
Oh, no, my health care cost an arm and a leg. I can't possibly remember why. Oh, yeah, it was Obamacare.
Exactly. They just don't get it. Unbelievable. It's just so disheartening to see this in this country and stoking this class warfare the way they do, and then honestly receiving political gain from it. It's just incredible. Taking up for the tech giants, not easy to keep kids off the internet these days when everything is done electronically. Yeah, but there are tools you can use to restrict. So I'm not taking up for them, and I don't think it was a good idea. I don't condone their use of their tools to addict kids. I get that, especially if it's harmful content. No, that's disgusting, and they should pay the price for that. Coming right back in the Element Wealth studio, final segment.
I move mountains for a living. You know what that means. Middays with Gerard Gibert.
We'll do it live
on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Wow, I feel good. I knew that I wouldn't. I feel
Welcome back, everyone. Middays, final segment from the Element Wealth studio. The great James Brown. It always conjures up the image of Eddie Murphy, right? He was so great playing that. Oh, man. On the ceasefire text line, David from Bruce, we were talking earlier about a measure that just passed in Ohio. The Ohio legislature sent it to their governor that would essentially criminalize the sexual, what do they call exactly? Sexual acts, I believe, or sexualization, something like that. Essentially, it's targeted at drag queens in front of children. And the Democrats did not see fit. Indecent exposure. That's right. Criminalize sexually explicit performances in front of children. The Democrats totally, every Democrat in the Ohio legislature voted against it. And David from Bruce says, at what point do Democrats call child abuse? I tell you, David, Rhino, you know what they call child abuse? When adult parents or guardians would not allow their child to go get their genitals mutilated because they just felt like it one day. They would call that child abuse, not the actual mutilation, that's what the president says, by the way, mutilization, not the actual mutilation of their genitals. Oh, no. You're accommodating. You're virtuous. You're noble. You're loving and caring. Right?
Because you bought into the 2020s version of lobotomy.
That's exactly. I've got some breaking news for you, though. Perfect for some of our culturally, it's hard to say, oriented content today. San Francisco, I had no idea. They're reversing course after a decade. They're reinstating Algebra 1 in middle school. I'm not kidding. For 10 years, They have not taught Algebra 1 in middle school.
Because letters and math are racist.
That's exactly right. So on Tuesday evening of this week, and it was by the narrowest of margins, I want you to know, a 4-3 vote by the San Francisco Unified School District to restore Algebra 1 to middle schools. They said that they took it out because of racial disparities. It was an attempt.
Letters and math are racist.
Correct. It was an attempt to achieve equity. When are they going to understand that all you're doing is hurting the very people you're trying to help? Let's figure out how to help them. Diluting the standards ain't the way to do it.
But it feels so good.
Oh, my gosh. I guess so. The mayor of San Francisco celebrated. The mayor's not bad, honestly. Not a bad dude. Algebra is returning to 8th grade public school classrooms. A major step forward for our students and our families. What tipped you off there, Mayor? Oh, my gosh.
That's about as bad as Eric Adams in New York when he was showing off. Look, we got dumpsters.
That's right.
You can put your trash in the dumpster and close the lid.
That's right. So this move was instituted in 2014 in response to disappointment with the number of students who were achieving Algebra 2 proficiency by the 10th grade. But so let's just get rid of the test, essentially. I don't mean test as in an actual graded test. I mean the test of proficiency, meaning you can actually take the class and pass it. Let's get rid of it since nobody can perform well. These people are just idiots. That's a kind way to put it. Oh, my gosh. So research found that after the decision, enrollment in AP Math in high school dropped 15%. You don't say. Oh, my gosh. So it also said, guess what? It didn't help. That's the whole point. What you were trying to achieve, you failed at, you fools.
Modern liberalism failing to do anything except stroke the egos of idiots? No.
So, Rido sent me a report on the break, the Lancet, that a UK publication, widely read in the academic medical community as well as just the medical provider community in general, they retracted 49-year-old unsigned commentary on talc for undisclosed industry ties. So they decided that the safety of the cosmetic talc, after two researchers discovered the author was a paid consultant. You don't say, to J&J, Johnson & Johnson. At the time, they were a big-time producer, the baby powder, right?
They got sued over it like a decade and a half ago.
Yeah,
but
exactly.
Lancet's just now getting around to retracting a 50-year-old article saying, no, it's fine.
1977 article. You nuts. Well, we're out of here today. Have a great weekend, everyone. Back with you again Monday. Stay safe, and God bless.
A SuperTalk Mississippi media production.